you're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a poor little me.
Do you feel it?
Yes, we do.
A worldwide awakening is upon us. Welcome to the Universal Consciousness Show. The Universal Consciousness Show, where we explore topics such as UFOs, aliens, banned medical cures, as well as classified secret knowledge. Come question your holographic existence. Share experiences from the other side. This is a show that will expand your mind as we decrypt the symbolic messages locked away deep within your DNA. And now, your guides for this magical journey. The hosts of the Universal Consciousness Show, Augie Nost and Diana Seraphim.
Hello. Yes, you are listening to the show for the Thinking Global Citizen. And my name is Augie, and I have my co-host with me, Diana. She is over in Germany. And hello, Diana.
Hello, everyone.
Hey. And we have a fascinating guest for you today, tonight, this morning, this afternoon, or wherever you are around the world. You have one of those things going on. So the guest's name is Dr. Claude Swanson, PhD, and we're going to be talking about some really interesting stuff. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about how you can connect with us. You can go to our website at www.universal-consciousness-show.com. And you can find us on YouTube and the Universal Consciousness Show, and we are on Twitter and just a lot of different places out there. And of course, also KCORradio.com. That you will find us in the archives, and we got the shows there, and you can listen to them all over again to get the good stuff out of it. So let me just get to the guest a little bit. I got some key words written down for you here that I want to mention. Dr. Claude Swanson, he was educated as a physicist at MIT and Princeton, and he did some postgraduate work at Cornell University, where he worked on design of superconducting plasma containment vessel for fusion energy systems. Boy, that's one of those things you can't say really fast, because this is the highest end of science that you can actually get into, just about. So you see, he was very much on the inside of the allowed and accepted form of science. But he broke out of the box and started looking for answers. In doing so, he found the commonly accepted Newtonian science was very limiting, and he did his own research, and both inside and outside of the box. And yes, there are answers, and there are great discoveries on a new frontier that is coming our way. And he explains that very well in his books. And this gets into the science of the mind, parallel realities, existence of consciousness, which science still are trying to figure out if real, but we have found it, and he has been written about it in his books. And also, he is discovering that remote viewing is real. And it can be taught and learned. And he talks about in his books about out-of-body experiences and many other things that is totally on the fringes of science. And I want to mention his books, actually, because that gives evidence of the paranormal. One of the books is Science of the Soul. Then we have Life Force, the Scientific Basis, and the Synchronized Universe. So this is going to get interesting. Welcome to the show, Claude.
Thank you, Augie. It's a pleasure to be here.
Hello, Claude, and thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, hi. Go ahead.
Yes, actually, I thought before, for people like you with such a huge knowledge, we should have a lifetime show. But we still have to squeeze everything. And I will just start with a curiosity question that I have. What was the turning point in your life that pushed you so far beyond the classic level of the science?
Well, I think what got me into science and into physics in the first place was curiosity. I wanted to know how things worked. And there was intuition, I guess, that so helped me to tell me just if you sit outside, on a summer evening and look at the stars, they feel so close, and you get the feeling of connection with things that are far away, and there's a curiosity about how it all fits together. So I ended up doing physics because that seemed to be my best chance of getting some real answers to how things connect. But as I got into physics, I discovered that a lot of the theories that we have nowadays, our science is so institutionalized. It's so organized with funding and large groups and universities. A lot of pressure to publish, things like that, and you don't have that time to sit back and ponder the big questions the way the philosophers could 100 years ago or 200 years ago. And what I found is a lot of the science that we have now has come out of this kind of high pressure, very organized system where there are certain questions that we're told to focus on. And those are the ones that our funding points us to. But a lot of the deeper questions never get answered. And it just seems like something is missing there, a deeper explanation. And that's really what kind of propelled me to look further.
Yeah, I think also that these learning institutions now that is doing a big part of the research in science, they're kind of monopolizing that because the private inventor that makes things in his garage, they are often intimidated out of business or scared out of business. If you take the real big breakthroughs and discoveries is very often coming out of the garage. Like Charles Poe in Canada, he created in the late 1950s, he created a carburetor that got over 200 miles per gallon on an old Nash automobile, 5,000-pound automobile. And today we are still getting only about 30 to 40 on the cars. This is ridiculous. So what do you think? Maybe what would it take to break that cycle? Do you have any ideas on that?
I'm not sure I have any bright ideas at the moment, but maybe as the conversation progresses, maybe something will turn up.
Okay.
I think that, to me, the first question, the first issue is that scientists need to look inward. Intuition is such a powerful guide, and it certainly led to some of the great breakthroughs. Einstein, for one, was guided by intuition. Other people that I really admire, it's that visualization. There's a visual part of our imagination that often communicates deeper ideas, like Tesla, as you know, used to invent all of his great inventions in his mind. And he would build them in his mind and watch them operate, and he would see which parts didn't work quite right, and he would correct them in his mind. And when he got around to actually building something, it worked perfectly because he'd already imagined it in such detail. So I think that, to me, our science could benefit from more emphasis on imagination and creativity, and just the ability to step back a little bit from the coursework that we're taught, and try to look at what else maybe was left out of the education. I know that for me, I was like most scientists, I was very convinced of the existing structure of science, because in our courses you have the textbooks, and you have the exams, and then you have your laboratory work, and the laboratory work always verifies the principles and the experiments. And so the two are always consistent. And you go in the lab and you say, oh, yes, I see that this is exactly how it works because I get the same answer that the textbook said. However, there are other experiments that they could have had us do that were not in the textbooks. And they might have given some other answers. If you go into a haunted house, or if you go into a sacred site like Stonehenge or Avebury, I mean, you will find energies like the Great Pyramids in Egypt. You'll find energies there that don't quite fit with the textbooks. If you study Qigong masters in China, when they do their energy healing, there are things that happen that don't fit our conventional science. And so just to get the student to step back a little bit from the textbook and say, okay, but what is left out? What else might be important too? And try to be a little more broad-minded. And also when people come up with ideas that sound crackpot and they sound far out, don't be too quick to dismiss them. Maybe there's something in there that is worth examining. So just a little more flexibility.
Right.
Yeah.
I heard you talking about the science of torsion. Can you elaborate a tiny bit about this?
Sure. Torsion really, for me, came out of when I was in Colorado. I was finishing up my first book, Synchronized Universe, The Science of the Paranormal, and I had about 12 different phenomena that I had good evidence for from the literature, that you can find experiments that have been done with ESP and psychokinesis, mind over matter, and things like that, and teleportation even, where scientists have done experiments and show that these things do happen under certain conditions. Of course, they totally violate our Western science. So the question is, what's missing? How can we explain these anomalies? And that's really what I was searching for. In Colorado, there was a group called, there's a subtle energy organization. It's called ISSEEM, that studied subtle energy. And that's what they call this extra energy that doesn't quite fit. So I was doing research on it, and eventually, after a long study and looking at the great research of people like Baron von Reichenbach in Germany in the 1840s and 1850s, and Wilhelm Reich later on, and the Chinese Qigong masters, they were all seeing the same energy. And finally, I came across the Russian work, Nikolai Kozyrev in the 1950s, who discovered or invented the idea of what he called torsion. And it's really the same energy. But he was an astrophysicist. Many of the scientists he worked with were hard scientists, so they were doing laboratory experiments. And I found that there was support for the existence of this extra energy that really has been studied by civilizations for thousands of years. I mean, the Chinese medicine, which goes back 5,000 years, is based on this same energy. When they talk about the yin and the yang of qi, it's the same energy that Kozyrev was studying. So anyway, that's what got me started on this whole thing, because it offers an explanation for how paranormal phenomena happen. And when you ask the question about consciousness, because we know that consciousness affects physics, and the quantum physicists 100 years ago discovered that a simple basic experiment called a double slit experiment, where electrons or photons are going through two narrow slits. If you look at the experiment, it affects the result. It changes it. So consciousness does affect quantum physics. And so it means that something is missing from our present science. And it seemed that torsion is probably the answer to what's missing. It makes up this consciousness energy that needs to be included.
So there is actually a connection between the torsion field and the science behind the double slit experiment, the wave function collapse.
I believe that. Yes. And I've done some simple calculations that can kind of verify that it's plausible that could explain it. There's a missing piece here, which is what our brain does, what our consciousness does, or what our mind does, when we focus on something, how we create a torsion field. It turns out, and in my second book, Life Force, I explain this, how what we call the aura that psychics can see and healers can see is really probably the torsion field. And it really is a result of the biophotons and the metabolism and the activity going on inside the human body, but it's also a result of how that interacts with the energy passing through the body from space, because torsion is everywhere. It's always flowing through us. And so the aura around us is really a torsion field that reflects all those processes. And
I found also that the human aura could be two. I want to hear your opinion on this, because I've been kind of puzzled about it. But this is what I found, is that it could be two different things. Actually, one of them is, yes, there is a bioelectromagnetic field that is put out by the energetic or the electromagnetic energy in the body. But then also, there's another field that I have seen, and that is non-physical light. That's the higher one. That's where you're talking the torsion energy, or the chi or the orgone energy. Do you think those are the same, or could they be two different things?
Yeah, no, they're two different things. I agree with you. I mean, they are connected, they interact, but I agree that they're both present, and they're connected with each other, but they are different. So that the torsion energy is very difficult to detect using conventional electronics. It doesn't show up. And so when people measure around the body, you can measure some voltages and things like that, but you don't measure some of the essential parts that are there, and that's the torsion field.
Yeah, there is some measuring equipment that has been developed. Wilhelm Reich did some of it, and with those very tiny, actually, sensing instruments, he can actually measure the amount of the orgone energy that come from an object.
Yes.
But
exactly.
Like you said, measuring non-physical energy with physical instrument is very difficult.
Right. And when we say non-physical, I mean, I think that's the whole problem with torsion, because it's not considered to be a physical energy, and we don't have good instruments for measuring it. But as you say, Reich developed some simple devices. Some of the Russian scientists have developed devices also that are sensitive to torsion. So hopefully we're coming into a time when our science starts to catch up and we start to develop ways of measuring this energy.
Can I ask you something? When I think about a scientific theory, I'm not a scientist, but I try to take the essence of this theory and try to apply it in my life to improve my life. So in my mind, it's always a connection. So can you tell me how would you translate for the common people the scientific discovery due to the double slit experiment, as well as the theory of Copenhagen? So the observed system can be changed by the observer. How could this discovery change our understanding?
Well, it's pretty profound. I mean, I think that, and the first thing to be aware of is how powerful our consciousness is. Right. That each of us has a consciousness, and really probably the aura, the energy field around the body, is part of a manifestation of that consciousness. When we focus our intention, or focus our attitude and our energies, we can affect the physical world around us, which is another way of saying that we can help direct our goals, help achieve our dreams, help cause things to manifest and come into being by focusing our desires and by focusing our energy on what we want to happen. So that's part of why prayer works. It's part of why meditation can be very powerful. You know, the yogis talk about yoga, which is what they do. Of course, that's the principle of meditation, as a linking, a yoking, as they say, of themselves with God, by which they mean universal consciousness. And universal consciousness, in my view, is this torsion field, which passes throughout the entire universe. It connects everything to everything else. And so it's really how we are able to know about what's going on in distant places. It's probably the energy that the pineal gland is detecting and enables us to connect with events that are far away. And so you connect that energy and you can direct it. You can cause things to happen that you want. So the power of prayer is something very real. It's been proven, and I have a little piece on my website talking about it. I call it the Global Peace Prayer, where I recommend or suggest people all meditate simultaneously. And there are certain goals that will help us get through the changes that we're going through right now. So one of the great lessons we can learn from all this is that consciousness is real and it's powerful. And so we can pay attention to our thoughts and help bring about the world that we want.
You were mentioning that people should meditate at the same time, not necessarily in the same location, but at the same time. That develops a mastermind, kind of, doesn't it?
Yes, it's a mastermind or a mass consciousness, exactly. And so it has a multiplier effect that can occur then.
What is your opinion about string theory? Is there a connection to the synchronized universe paradigm?
Yeah, I see now we only got a minute and a half left of the show, so
I
have to break up that answer for you.
Okay.
Well, I don't have any strong connection there. I think string theory is one of these things that's probably not finished. It's not complete. And so we'll just have to keep watching. But I don't have any easy answer to that connection. I think fundamentally at a very deep level, there's probably a connection, but I wouldn't be able to say what it is right now.
Yeah, I know that when you start looking into string theory, then you also find computer language in the fabric of space. And there is a theoretical physicist that has been on YouTube talking about that and was very fascinating. And right now I see that we got to go to break. So let's be back and we'll continue this discussion with more of the mysteries of the universe. See you there.
You're listening to the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly connection to the truth.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Share your knowledge by calling our hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Call now.
Worldwide callers find us on Skype at KCOR Radio. It's time to abandon your fear and question what you think you know.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
More awakening awaits.
After this, after this, after this, after this, after this, after this.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Ties.
Just super badass stuntman and real-life fall guy Matt Rigetti was on the show.
You know, we always laugh because you get an actor on set and casting directors and everybody's like, they've done action, they've done stuff before, and then we're like, okay, yeah, everybody says that.
Yeah, whatever.
And then they show up and you're like, all right, so you did some action, you know, you've got a big fight and a stunt to do, you know, it's gonna be demanding. What have you done? And they're like, well, on the last show I threw a punched a guy. And then, like,
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific, on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Toxins are everywhere, from the air we breathe to the food we eat and the water we drink. In a world where 80,000 known toxins and heavy metals threaten our very existence, how are you going to protect yourself and your loved ones? Introducing Pure Body Extra Strength, the world's first colloidal zeolite that helps trap and remove toxins as well as heavy metals from your body that are messing with your memory, clarity, sleep, and focus. Don't just take our word for it or the testimonials from our thousands of happy customers. Check out the hundreds of articles and case studies on the National Institute of Health website proving zeolite's powerful ability to remove toxins. For a limited time, listeners to KCOR will receive 10% off their first order. To get started, go to trypurebody.com and enter promo code RADIO10. Again, that's trypurebody.com. Toxic junk is all around us, but now you can take back control of your health and protect yourself by detoxing with Pure Body Extra Strength. You'll be on your way to sleeping better, thinking more clearly, and feeling more energetic. Go to trypurebody.com right now and get started today.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
It's showtime! You're listening to the KCOR Digital Radio Network. Break this up!
Broadcasting from the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Their base is so large it has to draw most of its power from the nearby nuclear fusion plant.
The future of radio is here and now.
Going live in 3, 2, 1.
It's time, once again, to unravel the mysteries of the universe by connecting the dots to a higher consciousness. This is the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Now the world will begin hearing us.
Share your knowledge by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
It's as simple as that.
Find us on Twitter at KCOR Radio or use hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us on the live chat at KCORradio.com. Back to your enlightened hosts, Agi Nost and Diana Seraphim.
And yes, you are listening to the Universal Consciousness Show, the show for the thinking global citizen. And boy, are we thinking today. We are getting into the deep of the mysteries of the universe here. So we are back with Dr. Claude Swanson. And Diana, you had a brilliant question here. Just lay it on us.
Yes, I also thought, what about the entanglement and the Poponian experiment? Is that also a scientific fact that should change our understanding, our way of thinking, acting, and living?
I think the entanglement is sort of built into quantum physics. So it tells us that things are really entangled in a much deeper way than we realize. It's different from our materialistic intuition of normal everyday experience, and it should change things as we understand better what it really means. In my own books, I think the entanglement, I can explain it in a sort of a deeper level, because everything that's happening locally, every little motion of every particle, is interacting with distant particles throughout the universe. So things that we normally think of as being independent, we say there's a little particle right here in our neighborhood, but it may actually be connected with and interacting with particles that are billions of miles away, both in the past and in the future. And so it may look like it's independent, but it's actually entangled. And I think that's sort of wrapped up in the structure of quantum physics and the entanglement principle. As far as the Paponin experiment, that's to me a different matter, but it's important because what they did was take a vacuum chamber in which you make a very strong vacuum, very empty, no air in there, but you put in a little container with some DNA in it. Then you shine a laser light on the DNA, and then you remove the DNA from the chamber, so it should be empty again. But they find that something is different now, that now there is some kind of energy form that has remained in the chamber. And when they shine the laser light in the chamber, they find it scatters off of this energy form that's left there. When what that tells us is that the vacuum of space that our science says is empty, there's nothing there, actually can have a structure. There can be energies that our science does not recognize, and those are what are being created when this laser illuminates the DNA. And to me, that is probably the prana. That is this exact same energy that we're talking about, the torsion energy, which has been created by the interaction of the DNA with the laser light. So it tells us that what we think of as empty space is not really empty. There's other stuff that can be there in an energetic form that is not in our present physics. And to me, that's connected with the soul, because the big puzzle for people who talk about near death and afterlife is when the body dies. Our science would say all there was matter. The matter is gone. The body's been cremated or buried. Nothing can be left. But we know that something is left, and that is this energy form. And that is seen oftentimes by hospice nurses. They see an orb, a glowing orb that leaves the body at time of death. During out-of-body experiences, people see orbs that can leave the body or that can move around. When you have a near-death or an out-of-body experience, your center of consciousness is not in the physical body. It's in this energy form. It travels with the form. You can look out from that form and look back at your body lying on the table. So that energy form is essentially wrapped up with what consciousness is. So the Paponin experiment shows that this special energy, or some kind of special energy, can exist that our present science does not understand. And I'm proposing that that's the same torsion energy that my books are about.
Wow.
Yeah.
But talking about the near-death experiences, we all know by now on a scientific basis that the people with terminal cancer who went through a near-death experience, they mostly go in a total remission as soon as they return in their body. And what is the science behind this healing? And do we need to die in order to activate this kind of healing power, or it should be also a way to do it in this realm?
I think there is a way to do it in this realm. There are energy healers, people who go into a light trance state and work with the energy of their own body and interact with the energy field of the patient and can cause changes or corrections to the energy field of the patient. And that is what brings about the healing. After all, it's the same pattern of energy. This is my second book, talks a lot about this. This is what we call the aura. But this aura is connected with the electromagnetic field in the body, the biophotons, and it has a pattern. It has information that tells the tissues how to grow. It tells the body how to heal. It's what governs our growth for everyone when we're growing up. But the same energy form is what a healer creates when he's sending out energy to the patient. An interaction occurs. In China, that's called Qigong. And the Qigong master is creating this energy. It connects with the pattern of energy of the client or the patient and can make changes in it. And those changes then will cause the organ to grow in a different way. It'll cause the cancer to go away. And oftentimes in a near-death experience, because the near-death experience is closely connected with our own path for life and for learning, our own karma, these higher energies seem to be connected with it, so that once you've learned your lesson, then these higher energies appear and they enable us to have spontaneous remission. But you're right, I mean, our present conventional science doesn't have any good way to explain that. But I think the torsion field and the aura does go a long way toward explaining how some of those things can happen.
That is so interesting. Which one of your books can people read more about this?
Well, the second book is called Life Force.
Yeah.
And that is the primary book where I discovered for myself the torsion field, and I connected with the Chinese work on the Qigong masters and Baron von Reichenbach in Germany. All these things reinforce, and of course Wilhelm Reich in Oregon, all these things reinforce each other. They're all discovering the same energy. They're looking at it from different perspectives. And I talk about how the aura in the body is really connected with the biophoton field in the body, which is a hologram that carries the patterns of our organs, the pattern for our tissue. And it's an electromagnetic field, but it also has this torsion component outside the body, and that's the torsion field that the healers will interact with.
Wow. But you are a researcher, a scientist who studied about Qi. How comes that the allopathic medicine, the Western science, still ignoring this life force?
Well, I mean, scientific revolutions don't happen easily. You know, there is a lot of inertia in a thought form or in the way of thinking of a society. I mean, we have people growing up, going to college, getting their degrees in different subjects. I gave a copy of my book, for example, to my daughter, who got a degree in biology, and I was talking to her about the acupuncture photographs of acupuncture meridians and the junctions. A lot about puncture point is now. Actually, it's a point where there's more left-handed torsion coming out than in, and the Russians explain how that's because the body is a negentropic system. That means it's very, very efficient in terms of how it builds tissue. So negative entropy is actually created in a living, healthy system, and that shows up the acupuncture system. So I go through all of that in great detail in the book with photographs and evidence. But, you know, this is not part of Western medicine. Western medicine is still going to be funded largely by the pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. There's a large medical establishment that supports it. And it takes time and effort so that it happens incrementally. It'll be the people who are on the outside. There are, fortunately, both in Germany and in America now, Qigong masters and healers, energy healers, and people who practice this type of thing, and acupuncturists. So it will maybe work its way in gradually, but it takes time.
Yeah, that's the thing, see, that as long as pharmaceutical companies are involved in funding anything, nothing will reach the surface unless they can have a profit from it. And
they cannot sell Qi, no?
They cannot stop it. It is coming. There's a wave of new frontier technology, both within medicine and everywhere else, that is now reaching the surface, and people are becoming aware of it. So it cannot be stopped.
And there are some things where acupuncture and energy medicine can help, where it's much better and much less invasive and less harmful than some of the chemical approaches. So I think that'll be another attraction for why it'll eventually, become more popular.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something? Well, we don't have so much time about the researches from Robert Monroe and Monroe Institute, the parallel realities, out-of-body experience, something like that.
Sure. Bob Monroe was an engineer, an electrical engineer who was developing a technology for sleep learning. He wanted people to be able to listen to tapes to learn Spanish while they were sleeping, things like that. That was his idea originally back in the 1950s. The trick was, how do you get somebody to go to sleep when you want them to do this? And he began experimenting with different sound waves to see how to put people to sleep. And what he found is if you put frequencies that are slightly different in each of the two ears, left and right ear, so the difference of the frequencies will correspond to a brainwave frequency, that then you could induce some of these very deeply relaxed states, like sleep and like deep meditation. So he was experimenting with that. In one of his experiments, he woke up and found himself basically lying on his ceiling, looking down at his bed below him. And he got scared because his body was down on the bed, but he was looking from the ceiling. So he was out of body, but this was back in the 50s. And people didn't know about out-of-body experiences then. He didn't. So he figured, first of all, I must be dying. Eventually he figured out what was going on, but it took time. And that was the origin of the Monroe Institute over time. And basically it's a technique for using these different frequencies in the two ears to help induce altered states, hopefully to induce out-of-body experiences, or even if not out-of-body, very relaxed states of altered consciousness. And at the present time, they use it to explore different realms of consciousness. And in fact, some very good books by both Bob Monroe, Rosalind McKnight, and Bruce Moen have been written, in which they will investigate the afterlife in the out-of-body form. In their Monroe Institute session, they'll go into the afterlife and find the focus level, as they call it, the vibration level of this afterlife. They can explore and come back with information. So in my book, Science of the Soul, I talk about lots and lots of different ways we have of knowing about the afterlife. And there are many, many ways we have of knowing that now. And this is just one of many different ways. But they all give the same picture that what's really important is not the physical body. We have a soul. Each of us has a soul that lives forever. And that soul is in a process of educating and growing and learning. And these lifetimes we have here on Earth are just like lessons. They're like grades in school where we get certain lessons we go through. And in the Monroe Institute, they can sort of visit some of those realms and come back. So, but there's just so much more to who we are as human beings, that this physical world is only a small part of who we really are.
But do you mean that we as, for instance, me as a common people without a special knowledge, if I listen to the hemisync sounds, can I experience an out-of-body experience? Can I have an out-of-body experience just by listening to hemisynchronization sounds?
That's a very good question, and they don't guarantee it. It's not a guarantee. In fact, I think one thing is people need to be prepared. So it needs to be a gradual process to make sure that people will be able to adjust to it or know what to expect. But in principle, it's possible. I think that theoretically, it's probably possible with just the right frequencies to do that. But I think sometimes the tapes that they sell are maybe downgraded a little bit so that they don't create a full experience because people can't handle a full experience right away. So typically at the Monroe Institute, there are different levels of courses you take, and you only get the more powerful tapes perhaps after going through some of the lower programs. But I think in principle it's possible to do it just with the frequencies. And that's what happened with Bob Monroe, that just the frequencies caused him to go there. And of course, of course, you relax. You have to meditate or become relaxed to, get distractions out of the way. But in principle, that's the idea.
I can see why the Monroe people actually split it up so that there's for beginner tape or immediate tape or advanced tapes, because being a traveler, I know that once you get out there, it sure looks different, and you really have to be ready for it.
Yeah, and despite the limitations, I mean, the alternative is to become a yogi and meditate for 20 years. So, so it would be faster than that.
So. Yeah.
Right.
And there are other people coming along with different products and different sound systems now, probably, so that there may be better ways or faster ways or alternative ways that become available or maybe are already available to do the same thing. But the basic principle of affecting the brainwaves seems like a really valid technique.
I also heard that. Sorry, I also heard that this technique would be good for autistic kids. Is it right?
Quite possible. Quite possible. I don't know. I think there have been experiments. They've been doing experiments, I believe, with autistic kids. And I've heard some good results. I don't know what their conclusions are. Autistic kids are interesting anyway because they have an unusual brainwave state, and it may be that they're already in a deeper meditative state. Some of the things that they do, a lot of them seem to have abilities that seem more psychic than normal people, so that they may already have an advantage, perhaps. But it's a research area for sure.
Absolutely, and I know you also mentioned that back in the 50s they were experimenting with. I think what I called it back in Europe when I was doing this was called sleep tapes. I could, let's say, I learned a foreign language that way. And after I went to flight school, I read my textbooks on a round tape loop. It was on a tape recorder. And I ran that at night. And I tell you, it helped me a lot. Going through tests in flight school, some of those tests they're really, they're ruthless. They're tough on you. But even though with a language barrier, I learned fairly fast and I aced the test. So I tell you, that stuff really works.
Yeah, amazing. Yep, that's great.
Just so I see that we have still 4 minutes from the show. What would be a message and kind of essence of your whole knowledge that you would tell to the humans? Something that would be changing, an enlightening tool, and information to transformation.
Well, I would say, first of all, go to my website, www.synchronizeduniverse.com, or just Google my name and the website will come up. And you can find there a lot more information about all 3 of the books, the Global Peace Prayer, and other things like that. One of the major messages is that we are in the middle of a huge consciousness shift here on the earth. There are various factors that are causing this to happen right now. And so we're coming into a time when we are learning much more about the power of consciousness, the importance of consciousness, and the fact that we are immortal souls. And we're learning, this is just one grade of school that we're in, learning to love one another, to be kind to one another, and that we're all connected to one another. I mean, these are universal messages that I think are becoming more apparent. And I would just suggest we all try to learn and grow as fast as we can.
Yeah, and find out who we are or what we are.
Yeah,
and you're right about that too.
We are souls. We are immortal souls, every one of us. That's not a euphemism. It's a statement of fact that that's what we really are. And these physical bodies are kind of our temporary illusions that we have to work with right here. But what we really are in our essence are these souls. And I think torsion is a piece of it that helps explain, how that all works. But in reality, we're much greater than what we think we are.
All right. And none of your books is available on Amazon?
I have stopped selling on Amazon because they don't tell me people's email addresses. When I sell a book on Amazon, I don't get people's, they conceal that from me. They keep that for themselves. So I cannot contact people afterwards. So I prefer people to buy directly from me, to go to the website, Synchronized Universe, or just email me, claudeswanson@gmail.com, and I can send you a PayPal invoice, and you can pay directly, and I'll ship directly to you. So it's the only way I've found so far to stay in contact with the people who purchase my books.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to do it. Yeah, we are down towards the end here, so we sure appreciate you coming on here and sharing your wisdom with us. And let's do this again shortly. Oops, we only got 30 seconds left, so thank you very much, Claude.
Thank you very much for the work you do.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very
we will
much.
see next week. We'll be here. We'll be looking for you, and thank you very much to the listeners. We love you. Be kind to each other.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
This has been the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly guide to a deeper understanding of the all that we are.
Well, in a few years, it will be a matter of common sense for very many people that they're one with the universe. It'll be so simple.
Live Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, hosts, or their guests, please visit universal-consciousness-show.com. That's universal-consciousness-show.com. Remember, there's a shift coming. A new earthly paradigm. A shift to universal consciousness.
Universal consciousness.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.
This is the KCOR